From Bosstrack, it's Her HypeSquad, a show about amazing women who've made incredible strides as leaders in their industry. They're here to support you and your leadership growth, to encourage you and hype you up as part of your Hype Squad. Hi everyone, welcome back to a new episode of Her Hype Squad with Bosstrack. I'm your host, Michelle Harris. I'm so excited to share my conversation with Lynae Remondino, Director of Talent Management at a large property management firm. Lynae and I talk about women and being both confident and assertive in the workplace. We talk about giving and getting feedback and the importance of candor in giving that feedback. We also get into authenticity. It's interesting because we know businesses say they want people to show up authentically, but do they really? It's a great conversation. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Lynae. Lynae Remondino is an Army-brat who grew up overseas and learned the importance of relationships at an early age. As a director of talent management, she's known to inspire minds and unlock potential while improving organizational effectiveness and efficiencies. Lynae's signals have gotten jammed many times over the years due to experiencing poor feedback and communication skills from others. The frustration she felt personally from the lack of leadership inspired her to create a leadership development workshop dedicated to coaching other leaders, which she hosts routinely on a bi-weekly basis. Through this forum, she leverages her uncanny ability to identify the root cause or specific behavior that will enhance relationships, performance, or development. Lynae is a strategic and empathetic professional whose purpose in life is to advocate for people. She's often known for producing aha moments for others. She's innovative and drives outside-of-the-box thinking while reinforcing the need to be solutions-oriented. She makes a difference by challenging leaders to be their best self while understanding their responsibility is to foster future leaders and help them navigate. This is where her passion for coaching has become instrumental in her day-to-day life. Lynae's certifications include Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, Situational Leadership, Development Dimensions International Leadership Facilitator, and Succession Planning and Talent Development. Well, so with all that said, here's my conversation with Lynae Remondino. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Lynae. I am so happy that we finally coordinated time to talk, and it's great to see you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation. I know you have a lot of great information to share, and it's a very important topic that we're going to talk about. So thank you for joining us today.
I'm glad you invited me. I'm looking forward to this as well.
Great. I'd love for you to share with the audience, a little bit about you, a brief description of your experience and what you currently do in your leadership role.
Sure. So I am the Director of Talent Management here at Avenir Living. I've been in property management for 30 years, so I have some experience on the operations side, but for more than the last 20, I've been in the learning and development, organizational development, and now talent management sector. And I spend quite a bit of time on coaching and supporting our leaders and being better leaders and how they show up every single day. But I think, anything to do with talent management, building efficiencies, productivity, I think it's really a lot about, KPIs in the organization and how do we support team members' performance and then audit that, track that, develop on the learning sector, what we can do to continue to support that, and then just efficiencies in general in the organization. So anything that will help us in attracting, retaining, developing our workforce.
Perfect. And from that, I know you have kind of a different perspective than a lot of other people because it's not only about you leading a team of your own, but you are helping other leaders lead their teams. So you're kind of seeing things from an outside perspective as well. So I can imagine that you get a pretty wide angle view of different leadership challenges that people face.
Absolutely. And, this particular population in property management, especially at field level, it's highly female population. So there's a lot of women perspectives. And then certainly, of course, you also have the gender communication because we do have higher leaders that are male and some women, but it is there's always that diversity, but it is a population of a lot of women, which is I think a unique thing in just business in general.
Yeah, and that's another amazing perspective to add in there too, because yeah, it's not too often that you're in an environment where most of the leadership or a higher percentage of the leadership is a female. So that's going to be interesting to hear your insights, because I know we have such an interesting topic and something that I get asked about a lot myself. I've had different conversations with different women's groups in different multiple industries. It's always a challenge, but I know we're going to talk about really like for women in communication when they're trying to be confident and assertive, and there's a bias there where they're taken as being aggressive, or when I say the word, they're a
Oh,
bitch.
let's please say it. I've
So
never been referred to as that at all, I don't think.
yeah, I mean, I know that's our conversation. I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on that, and kind of what do you think like drives that whole, well, first of all, maybe you can offer your perspective on that, and maybe we can get into talking about like what do you think like drives that, and then we can kind of go from there.
When you and I spoke about doing this, of course, it's right up my alley. And I think that there's women are often perceived as, and I should say maybe even by other women, this isn't a gender thing, but I think that we, especially depending on the generation that we're referring to, that women should maybe be a little more meager and more mild tempered, or certainly not too passionate and definitely not too bold. And so I think that my perspective um, might be jaded for some, might be more biased for some, because I am a bold communicator. And I think something a lot of people refer to me as is confidence. So when you combine those two, already you walk into a room and I hear you kind of have a presence. And so then you speak, and you speak so concretely. And I think there, unfortunately, it can automatically have some people shut down on you, or consider you too much of something of any kind. And I think we get it, and every single one of us gets it every single day. The quiet ones, they hear you're too quiet, right? So I think I don't want to say that we aren't all uniquely ourselves and we all don't hear feedback, or we all have to live with everyone's perceptions. But as you know, I think you've heard me say, I can't live up to everybody else's perceptions, right? And I think the world, we've changed and morphed, I think, into wanting everyone to be their most authentic selves. But then when we say that, do we really understand what that means? And do we really want it? Like, and do we know how to handle it? That's really the interesting part. And so for me, my perspective on, first off, the word aggression, just, it hurts my soul. I think, when certain styles of communication, and whether DISC or whatever the case may be, best, you can do the best communication DISC, which is an affiliate to DISC, or even Myers-Briggs. When you learn those components about an individual, and you learn that it's your inborn preferences, it's not like you're choosing to be anything, but you have people that are very opposite of you, and those individuals are always going to use stronger words to define you. But the word aggression, to me, if you look it up, it refers to almost like you're willing to walk all over somebody to get what you want. And so I often say I'm very assertive, and I think in this world we have to be. And there's dynamics that that cause that for all of us. But yeah, so that's some of my take.
So I'm interested to hear what is the feedback that you said, like you've been in meetings where people shut down or kind of feel that it's too much. Like, what is the feedback that you get? Like, how do you know when somebody is kind of responding to you in that way, that they're taking your confidence and your bold communication style in maybe a wrong way?
Yeah, gosh, Michelle. Okay, I feel like I'm about to go into therapy, or your listeners are about to be like, "Ooh, okay, let's listen up." So I will say it's twofold, right? For me, if you are asking my personal experience. So I will tell you, I had a boss one time tell me that I had a superpower. And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's exciting. Like, I love it." And I've heard this through most of my career, but the way that she had shared it with me was that I have the ability to be a forward thinker. I'm a visionary, and yet I can connect dots to all the way up through to that future and see things that a lot of people can't necessarily see. So I think then it could appear to some that I'm pushing my ideas on them, or when I'm really just trying to help us also see the future. And when you have some individuals that are just action oriented movers, they want to get stuff done, which we need everybody, right? For a team. I think those individuals may tend to feel a little more pressure because with my bold personality, in addition to that. So I think there's always these other little components about all of us, right? So it's not so black and white that I can answer that so clearly like I would love to for you. I think that it helps because I'm concrete in the things that I'm saying, and yet it works against me because even when I'm brainstorming, I sound concrete. And so like everyone may think I know what I'm saying and what I'm doing, and inwardly there's probably that person that's like, "No, I need help here." Like I'm just kind of, winging it in the moment and coming up with some ideas because I'm quick, I'm quick that way. It doesn't mean that I feel it's the right way, and yet it can be misinterpreted because of how confident and bold I am in my communication style.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you so much.
It's a lot of vulnerability I just gave you.
Yeah, and I mean, you brought up a very important topic, which is short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. And I think businesses are way too short-term thinking oriented, but that's like a whole other topic for probably for another day.
I'm in when you're ready.
But so like, I'm just thinking for listeners out there who are trying to communicate confidently, and they're speaking up in meetings and they want their voice to be heard. Maybe they hear something that they believe isn't right, and they kind of bring up their thoughts, and that kind of leads down the rabbit hole of them kind of looked at then as being like not a team player, or being like, going back to the aggressive word, or just being like disagreeable all the time. So I think a lot of times people do get that feedback either directly or from kind of the feeling that they get in the meeting. But at the same time, I think there are times too, and you can kind of tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe you've talked to different people in the company and in the companies you've worked with, that sometimes it's really just a misperception on their part. And have you run into that? Like, how do you coach people through to know if they're really being overly assertive? Because there are times when maybe somebody they don't know how to communicate well, and they are coming across as aggressive because they're uncomfortable with being assertive. But so how do they know? Like, what do they do?
So this is what's interesting to me. Everything is relationship based, right? And so for me, it is, I live by this adage of talk to and not about. And so I feel that that is something that people don't do enough of because of either their fear of having difficult conversations, their fear of their own communication style, whether they think too much or too little, and they just, however it's going to come across to another human being. I believe in, if you care about somebody and you want to have a relationship with somebody, and in work we don't have choices, that you should have direct communication with each other. But then there's my direct style, right? So it shows up in that. But I don't know another way to coach to this, because I believe the only way to live up to someone's perception is if you're working with that individual on their perception. And so too many people, too many leaders tend to play middleman and tend to, then they have their own bias, right? Where they kind of build in, oh, I've seen that too. And so now it becomes a thing, and it's more morphed into maybe your boss's perception versus, it's like the telephone game. You heard this, but I'm going to internalize it as this, and then I'm going to share it as that. And it's just so unproductive, and nobody's got time for it, really. At the end of the day, a lot of businesses that I've been in, and I would guess maybe even you, it's not so serious that these things have to get in our way at all. And yet people potentially are fearful of just saying, hey, when you did that in this meeting today, this is how I took it. Is that how you meant it? No, that's not at all how I meant it. There's what I meant. And it just opens up the gamut to a better place of understanding. And it's just such an underutilized trait that I think people in general, work, outside of work, inside of work, it's just communication is one of the biggest differences we all face every day, and often don't spend a lot of time to hone those skills.
Yeah, completely
I don't know if I
agree with
answered your
that.
question, but
No, you did,
yeah.
and one of the things that we promote with Bosstrack is honest communication. We talk about radical candor. We actually, we really promote that book as well. It's a great book, Radical
It's a great book.
Candor.
I've read it.
Yeah,
Yep.
and some people think for new leaders it's too advanced, but I don't know when else you start. When do you start if you don't start when you're a new leader to kind of take on that philosophy of, because you're not doing anybody any favors by holding anything back, because if you're not giving someone that feedback. So let's say an example, if I was in a meeting with somebody on my team who did get up and they maybe got a little overpassionate, got upset with somebody across the table, and they started to kind of get like a little angry sounding.
Mm-hmm.
And then I observed like that happening multiple times, but even the first time, I think it's your job as a leader to save that person and give them that feedback, because they're in that moment where they're not recognizing how they're being perceived. They're just like communicating the only way they know how to communicate. And they're going to get a reputation, that reputation for, being too forceful or too I hate to use the word emotional, because it's okay to be emotional.
Well, for some, but some don't like it.
It depends on, there's a fine line, I guess. But yeah, like if you don't give that feedback, they continue, and it doesn't serve them at all. People are going to talk, they might be the best at something. They might be the great next leader, and you go to promote them, and somebody, a peer or your boss, like, they're all kind of talking like, no, like, why would you? Because of this. And, it's your job as a leader to help that person develop and grow. And holding back because you feel like you feel bad, or you don't want to be critical, or, whatever your reason is, it's like, it's really hurting them. And it's really, there's definitely needs to be a shift in the way you look at being candid with somebody.
I couldn't agree more. I think that there is, to your point, a huge disservice that we do. Again, and it's not, yes, as a leader, but it's so much broader than that. If our roles are to build future leaders, if that is our role as a leader, then how can you do that if you're not beside them and coaching and guiding? It's up to whoever it is to want to make those changes, of course, but the biggest disservice we can do is to not even just let them know, or, hey, did you mean to be so passionate in that meeting? And here's the other double-edged sword. Like, if you squander somebody's passion, then what do you have? And so it's this fine line, I think, for leaders as well, right? And understanding what is it that we're trying to achieve in the feedback that we're providing, and where in this person's delivery did it make others so uncomfortable. And that's the art, I think, of leadership, but also the art of, again, we want to promote being your most authentic self. And yet, do we want that? And I don't think that companies, when we establish core values and we and we, not certainly at my company, but I'm just saying in general population, if it is true that the number one opportunity that a lot of leaders have is in coaching, which it's true,
Mm-hmm.
and then you add in the nuances of holding difficult conversations or having to, share feedback and, all these other elements that go along with what it takes to coach. To your point, I often am known for saying it's not a thing until it's a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We make things such a thing, and then coaching sounds like counseling, and then it's so negative, and yet everyone's just trying to show. Most people don't wake up in the morning, plant their feet on the ground and say, today I just want to be a jerk to somebody or not show up today. Like, it's not the norm. And so if we know that, it's how as leaders do we cultivate people in their strengths and support them along the way, and even laugh with each other over just human things that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we catch it early on, like you said, and we come out of that meeting the very first time and we're like, hey, what got you so riled up? What made you so passionate about that? And we pause as leaders. I'm going to go sideways for 1 second.
Of course.
I think that the another opportunity is leaders are like, especially at a certain generation, oh my gosh, they're difficult because, I don't want to hear the excuses, and I don't want to, I just want to tell you what you need to do, go and do it and be done, which is, in my opinion, not great leadership, number one. But it is what we do, what we've seen, and if our leaders got to a great place in life and that's how they treated us, then we start to implement and kind of we're the same. But I think that we owe it to our team members to not be that way. I think we owe it to them. And if I'm not learning from my team member and I'm not pausing to understand what got them to where they're at, if they don't share their excuses with me, I don't know where to coach.
Right.
And so people want to stop the gap. They don't want to spend the time because we're so busy. And then we tend to avoid, again, the difficult conversation because we go into tell mode instead of, as your leader, let me listen to learn and help guide. And I think that's the biggest injustice we do to our team members.
Yeah, I agree. And it's so interesting that, we say they always have excuses, but it's not, you can't look at it as like an excuse. They're giving you their reasons, like whether you feel like they're legitimate or not, they're the reasons, not excuses. And you need to help them kind of work through those reasons. And that's your job as a leader.
For sure.
And I'd love to kind of go back to authenticity. Like you said a couple times, like we want people to be their authentic selves, but do we really want that? I was just talking to somebody last night. They're in a role and they're kind of in this challenging position where they're new and they knew the person from working in a prior life and they had a comfort level. But when they got to this new environment, they were getting the feedback that they needed to act a certain way or they needed to present themselves a certain way that wasn't necessarily authentic to who they were. So it's so just so relevant to just even a conversation I had recently. I'd love to kind of understand why you say people want authenticity, but do they really? What do you mean by that?
Because I think we often are trying to live up to others' perceptions all the time. And my experiences and my reality will never be your experiences or your reality. There's so many things that shape us, from whether we both had both of our parents around when we grew up. I'm the middle child of 3 girls. Let's talk about that another day. And so all of those things shape how we show up in the world. And a lot of them aren't things. If we get feedback, a lot of the times it's the same things we're hearing. A lot of the times, not all the time, but a lot. And so it's, how do we help the world kind of shift its mindset in embracing people's strengths, knowing that we are dealing with human beings, and with those strengths, you're going to have headache. You're going to have something. And yet we want to have everybody be molded and kind of shaped, I feel a lot of the times, a certain way. Or we want to, well, we gotta minimize this. But when you what's like you burn out somebody's fire in one area, you'll get something else. So stay tuned, right? Like it's so, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you let people fly. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, and it goes back to what I said originally, in my opinion, for whatever it's worth, it's all about one-on-one relationships. If we start going, we do 360 evaluations, and yes, it's important to identify trends. But let's say, and I happen to know this about us, that we are ENTJs and we have in Myers-Briggs, right? And so we have, let's say we have 5 people that are all built kind of from the same cloth. And then you have 5 people that are not. Well, the 5 people that are not are a theme. And yet, if I don't know who those 5 people are, if I don't know that I can have an open door conversation so that I can lean in and say, we're different. How can I support you better? What do you need from me in the environment when we are together? Right? If I don't get that opportunity, that perception is not going to go away. And I'm working to change who I am to fit a mold of somebody else's perceptions because they're different than me. And that takes us all into diversity, equity, inclusion. So we'll stay away from that for a minute, but communication, though, when we do look at it, because of our upbringing, because of all these other things, it is the number one component of diversity that I feel is often not spoken about as much as it should be, even within diversity and equity and inclusion. So that's what I mean by authenticity, and allowing people to be their most authentic self, and being cautious of how we promote people's strengths, and really cultivate that with individuals, and have the light shine on the positive things that people bring to the equation. And we're talking about A performers, or even B plus. We're not talking about your C or D performers and that don't have certain core values that your organization needs, etc. But values are very different than, let's just say, the way somebody shows up, right? Our values could be very similar, but the way we show up with those values might be very different.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. So I think a lot of this gets back to empathy and really kind of taking the time to understand where another person is coming from, what they're feeling and what they might be thinking, and being open to understanding where they're coming from. And then obviously knowing yourself and how you respond to things and being self-aware. I'm curious, and I know I'm just going to say this, empathy seems to be a bit much more innate in women than in men. And I'd love, since you kind of have an environment where you have more women leaders than male leaders, like, do you see that? Do you feel that? Do you observe like women being able to be more empathetic and kind of allowing people to live or work in their authentic way and be their authentic selves? Or do you see it kind of across the board?
I see it across the board. And I think, it's interesting. I do think that men can be empathetic, and there are, again, because there are men that have certain communication styles, right? That just is their innate ability to be. I think where there's a difference is it's twofold. Back in my day, I know I sound like I'm an old lady that takes my teeth out at night, but back in the day, I remember that it was a dog-eat-dog world with women, very competitive. And there's been a huge shift in society where it's a sisterhood, I feel like, for the most part. And yet there's still some cattiness. There's still, and I don't believe that it's intentional, any cattiness. I think, again, it goes back to who is willing and able and confident enough to hold difficult conversations that don't need to be difficult. But Michelle, I did a coaching session not terribly long ago with a lady, and I will tell you that the minute I said, let's skills practice this, how would you approach with your team member? And I'm not kidding you, the shifting in the chair, getting really buttoned up and stiff and it was the first time something had happened with this team member. Again, it wasn't a thing, but it was being made into a thing. And it was, well, I'm gonna call her into my office and I'm just like, boy, okay, so let's talk about that, right? Why is it such a thing? Why not just be like, hey, yesterday, like, but we button it up and we have to magnify it and make it so huge. And then of course your team member, you're their boss. Your team member is already like on pins and needles, and then they're not going to be able to show up with you without probably being more defensive, because we're creating an environment where it feels hostile or it feels worse than what it should, especially if we're calling it coaching. But so I do see that both have the ability. I see that it's across the gamut with both not feeling comfortable, but with men to men, what I do notice, and I got to tell you, what's fascinating to me is men can get in the room together and jab at each other. And like, you can sit there with a room full of men. I have had that opportunity many times in my life, and you just kind of observe and you watch, and like, it's almost like they're giving each other feedback, but they're not, and it isn't a thing, but it's almost too much not of a thing. And then they move on. And it's fascinating to me. So yeah, so I do see those differences where women they're not as likely to do that in that environment. And so definitely there's differences, but I do think empathy is shared. It's just, how is it demonstrated among the genders? So
Yeah, and I mean, I definitely agree with you. And empathy can be learned. I mean, it can be innate, but it can be learned as well. So definitely have seen my share of male leaders who are very empathetic, and I've seen my share of women leaders, female leaders who haven't been. So I'm just curious, since you have like a little microcosm there, what your take was. And I love what you said about that men can just like dig and jab at each other. They can like shit talk with each other, and they get their point across because obviously there's some truth to what they're saying, but then they just move on. And I like, what do you think, that do you attribute that to just how like just society, like women, how women were raised, and like why can't we do that with each other? It's like, why is it so different?
I don't know. I really don't know. It's fascinating to me. And again, I do think to some degree your generation matters in this regard, because, I think that a generation above me, or even one above that, for those, my grandmother probably, if she could see me, which she can, I guess, but if she could see me today, she would probably say, oh my goodness, she's too confident, and oh my goodness, right? So I wish I had that magic ball where I could see inside to say, and even better, where I could create a movement, if you will, with women. I think we're there, but we're there, like I said, as a sisterhood, which is a beautiful place. I wouldn't want to change this for the world now. There's nothing better than to lift other women up and support each other and be happy and proud of their successes, instead of it feeling like it felt when I was in my 20s or even early 30s. I think I do think, though, there's a lost art in men and what they play in that, and how they support and even mentor women. Because if we have a lot of men that are at the highest at that table that you're wanting to get to, I don't want to make it a gender thing, and yet it's hard for women and for us, I think, not to, because there are places, and we want to strive as well, many of us, right, to have a seat at that table. And sometimes if that table is full of a lot of men, you don't know that you're really being understood, or that I feel blessed that I have a voice in the room in those areas. I just think that there is still potentially perceptions and bias just because you're a woman, whether we openly admit that or not. And so my question would be to any man that's out there listening to this is, how at an upper level in leadership are you mentoring those women to have that seat at the table? What part do we play to put them there and guide them and mentor them, along the way. And I feel like it's not happening nearly enough.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think it's even more than mentorship, it's sponsorship. It's,
Mm.
identifying those people that have the capabilities and skills and really bringing them up, not just mentoring them, but like bringing their name up in the right conversations, like recommending people for projects. Really, I think, I don't know if you've read My Life in Full by Indra Nooyi. She's very talented, and her career was like driven by her capabilities and her drive. But she also was fortunate enough to have men that knew what she was capable of and were willing to like talk about her and recommend her for new positions. And I just think there's not a whole lot of that. So I'd love to see more of that. And I was going to say something else about that. Oh, I know what it was. And the other thing too is interesting. I don't remember where I heard this from, and hopefully I'll remember before we publish this episode. But there was something I had heard. Somebody was telling a story about a CEO that was coaching or having the sessions with their VPs or director level, and they were kind of talking to the men about like operations and finance and like really like driving operational results. But then they were talking to the women about soft skills, like how they can communicate better. And like, so, and obviously to move up to a C-suite position, you need to have those strategic, like you need to have that focus. And I think like they had received a coaching session themselves, like maybe they were in an executive program, and the guy just didn't even realize that he was doing that. And it was he didn't know that he had that internal bias that was driving him to treat the two groups differently. So I think it's just really becoming aware too of like how you're showing up for your team and making sure that there is equality in the way you're treating people. And I think there's not enough of, I don't know what your thought is, but there's not enough of that.
No, I think that because men are so accustomed to a different art of communication with men in general, I do think that there is a difference, whether they realize it or not. And it is, to your point, it is interesting because you could have the most capable female in the world that doesn't have any performance issues. But I think I've not had very many women bosses, and I'll be honest with you, back in the day, I remember saying, I don't want them. I prefer because I am a bold communicator, but it requires a bold individual to lead me well, because I feel that and don't get me wrong, I think every style is needed on a team. I think that's where you have the most efficient and end result, when you have that kind of different ways of thinking, so that you're brainstorming and catching everything to support. When you have in talent management, you have to support all talent, so it can't be one focus, right? So I think that it's really important that, going back to what you were saying with men leaders that are men, that they understand we're just human too, right? And that we're going to have some hiccups along the way, just like anyone else. But I just don't know if they know how to handle it as well, or how to approach it as well. And I wish we had a man on here to kind of tell us. But the beauty of this world is we could have 5 and they all might have different perspectives. I think it's still less than that. I think it's more about whoever has the seat at the table, whoever it is, male or female. I've often said I'm not a proponent of mentorship programs, so to your point, sponsorship program, but mentorship programs internally. A lot of companies do this peer-to-peer thing. And to me, yes, do we want our team members to be comfortable? We absolutely do. And so I think companies think that's the route to go, is to set them up with a peer. But for me, it's who's the next, if we want people and we are in a position to build the next leaders, then the mentor to that person has to be at least one step up. And I often find, where are they?
Right.
Who are they? And more importantly, if coaching in general, again, is a challenge for most leaders, even if they were there, how are they showing up?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I like that. Well, I personally have not really thought about a mentor being at the same level. It's always been in my brain that it's at least a step above, like you said. It's
mhm,
interesting. But I
mhm.
think too, like people don't need to look just in their company for that mentor. And in fact, it can often be better to find a mentor that's outside of the company you're working with or
Yeah.
working in, or even like different industry, like just getting those different perspectives is helpful. And I do think there are so many women, kind of going back to your point earlier about kind of that sisterhood and, that hype squad, which of course
Mhm.
that's what we're all about, her hype squad with
Yes.
Bosstrack. But there are so many women that do want to give back and really help the, women leaders coming up, because they know what they went through as a new leader and they know the challenges, and they really want to find a way to support. And that, I mean, with Bosstrack in our community, that's what we really try to do, is like have that online. But I know there are other organizations as well that do that. And definitely anybody listening, I would say for sure you need to find a mentor. I think and we're actually working on a course right now about building your personal board. Who do
Nice.
who are those 5 to 10 people you need to have around you to grow your career exponentially? And of
Mhm.
course, like a mentor is one of those. So I feel like I kind of circled around, but
But no, but I
but it's
love
so
that.
important. It's so important for people to look wherever they can to find that mentor. And there's so many women or men, I mean, wanting to support them.
I think you're right. I think, and there's so many things again, and everything you and I are talking about, there's so many factors, right? Nothing is so black and white, and there's always shades of gray. I think, my lens is property management. There could be many other industries out there that don't build mentorship programs the same way, but a lot of in my industry, it's considered more like a buddy system, but the mentorship because you're new, potentially here's somebody who knows your role, can help set
Mhm.
you up, can, build you because they're more experienced in that role. But to your point, and what I was saying, I feel like businesses you own your own development. I believe in that. You have to be given the feedback, right? You have to know where you stand with certain people, and it can't be through hearsay. But once you're given it, you own what you're going to do with that and how you want to show up for another human being. But I think that there's
Mhm.
an element of also looking at in business. I have my mentors outside, right? I have the people I know I lean to and I will brainstorm with, or I will even call up and my mom and dad on any given day and, just talk to them about what I might be going through and leaning on them for guidance. But I think that that's one component. In business, though, I think businesses owe it, especially to your top 5%. If
Mhm.
you have people and you're looking at succession planning and, just what is that career pathing, that mentorship, who's taking that on, who's helping that person grow. And that's where I believe it has to be that level up, but it
Yeah,
requires time, and a lot of
right.
people just don't have it, and most companies run so lean these days.
Yeah, that's true. I'd love to circle back around to the topic of so being assertive and confident. So
Sure.
one of the things I don't think we talked about was like if a woman or if somebody listening to this conversation is feeling like they're being perceived as overly confident, or they're taken the wrong way, or it's being seen in a negative light, what are some things they could do to understand it better? What do you
Yeah.
think they can do? Like, what are some of the actions they could take?
Yeah, I think again, and I'm so sorry you don't hate me when I keep referring back to communication, but I do think again, it's asking the right questions, leaning in. I have found that a lot of people, even when I lean in and I ask for feedback or I say, how do you think that went? Or even then, people will potentially just, right? Oh, it's great,
Hmm.
and you don't often know. And again, it requires people to just be honest, just share. And we live in this world where I think now even more than ever, society is making it so hard and in even honesty because we have to be so politically correct in so many things. And yes, we should be to some degree, but then we shouldn't make it so hard on ourselves that we lose that candor. And, if you're being fair but kind and direct, like that, the direct part is probably the kindness, right? It is
Right.
important to share. So one thing is to ask the questions. See if you get the answer. Another is if you really do question that in yourselves. I think when we are able to be our most authentic selves is when we're around our family and our friends. Ask your family and friends. See what information they'll give you. The best feedback you can get, though, is unsolicited, and the best feedback you can get is from people you trust the most. And so if we're open to that, then, you said something earlier, and it's all about self-awareness. I know exactly who I am. And so it's hard because I want to be who I am, because I hope no matter how bold I am or any of those things that, people, it resonates to people that I care. And when I'm sharing ideas, it's because I care. I care about something, either the person who's asking for help or the company as far as efficiencies, or I think, again, most people are coming from that place. And so it's how do you, I think, ask yourself, what are you willing to adapt or adopt in your way of being, right? What do you want? What do you want to project? And there'll be some that want to project more or less of something. And I say, go for it. But if you don't, then, there's self-help books, there's all kinds of stuff. But I think that there's more of that's more of an internal question to know, is there something within yourself that you really want to change? Or are you doing this for advancement? Are you doing it for other ways other than, again, being able to live your most authentic self? Because at the end of the day, when you don't, it will come back and bite you. It will show up some way, somehow. And that's not pretty on anybody.
Great. Well, I love that perspective. And I'd love to switch it up a little bit if you have you have more. Do you have time?
Only for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Always.
So, is there anything that you wish you would have known when you started out as a leader? Like something you know now that, you really would have been helpful to know back then?
Yeah. When I started out as a leader, because I didn't know myself so well, I mean, I had become a manager in my first year in this industry. So typically I would have said, pause and don't try to move so fast, but that's just not who I am. But I didn't know a lot. I didn't know enough of anything. And my leader was never in the same state as me for quite a few years in my first years as managers, my regional at the time, or regionals. But I would say that because of that and not knowing myself so well and still learning the industry, I didn't show up nearly as well as I could have. I think that there's variables in life that was happening on the side, but I just wish I would have known myself better before I went and stepped into that. I think I was a manager at the age of 24, I think.
Yeah.
And one of my first team members was in her 50s. That was interesting, right?
Yeah.
So somebody who really probably knew all about who she was. And here I am, and I think leaders, when you become a brand new leader, for sure, we feel the weight of the world. And in my industry, when you are handling a multi-million-dollar asset, and everything from the financial side of it to the customer base side of it, I mean, you name it, the expenses, your budgets, everything, you feel like you run your own business. And I think young leaders tend to put the weight of the world on their shoulders and forget they have a whole team. So something I wish I would have known was trust my instincts, know myself, and I'd say the biggest thing is to remind myself to talk to my team the way I would my boss. If I would have treated them more like partners, the way I considered my bosses as, I think the communication would have been a lot different, and I would have had a stronger team because of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's
Can you stop making me be so vulnerable? Just kidding.
Oh, so we talked a little bit about mentorship earlier. Have you had a mentor that has made a
Mm.
difference in your career or your life?
Yeah, the best boss I've ever had. I am 50. And let me tell you, I've had more really rotten bosses than I've had good ones.
Mm.
And I know I'm a handful. So I want to put that out there. But I'm human, right? But I've had some pretty rotten bosses that didn't know how to give me feedback or didn't know how to let me flourish, or I felt wanted to, like, you know, pigeonhole me. So my most recent boss before the one I have now, the one I have now, we go back 15 years. So that's wonderful to have. But my strongest mentor in a leadership role, his name was Gil Guerra, and he unfortunately passed a year and a half ago in the Surfside collapse.
Mm.
Him and his wife, and heartbreaking. And
Yeah.
although he was only in my life a year and a half, I so admired him and his spirit and his story. And one of the gifts that he had that was just the talk to and not about was actually something he brought to us, that exact verbiage, but it came up in a conversation between him and me, because he was like, you always go directly to the person. And then, like, in our brainstorming sessions, which we just used to do so much of that, and I think I really loved that about us. There was this way of being that I didn't see that he ever got in the middle of just listening to people's feedback. What he did that I loved, that was an art, was, let's say you came to me, Michelle, and you start just about whoever. He had this way of saying, okay, so what part did you play in that?
Mm.
So he took so we often said we were going to write a leadership book together about, I'm trying to write something around perceptions right now. And it's not going very well. I've got to break it into better pockets. But we used to say we wanted to write a leadership book together because of exactly that the communication is just a lost art, and how people tend to get into the middle and try to give feedback, where instead he would say, okay, so this is your perception of the situation. How might you be causing that perception? Like, what in your life have you experienced that makes you think that way? And what could you do differently to maybe help change the narrative or help guide so and so in showing up differently for you, instead of just, oh, I heard all that, now I'm going to go to this person, I'm going to give you all this feedback and you need to do something differently. He would turn the tables. And although you don't like to be on the receiving end of that, but yet you should. And it does make you think, like, okay, well, the definition of insanity is to continue to do the same thing over and over. So if it's not working and I'm venting, what can I do differently? And the only thing we can change is ourselves. And so it's how do we all do that better? So anyway, I loved him. I love him. He just, again, was such a great human being, and he had so many things that I looked up to in the way that he even helped me navigate a new world for me. I moved down here for the job and didn't have any friends in the area. And so just how he, tried to lean in and support me was invaluable.
I appreciate you sharing that, and I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
I know that was devastating, very devastating event, and
for the whole
it's hard. It's
country.
heartbreaking to still drive past the lot and
I know.
think about that. But
I know.
so I'd love to shift gears and talk about wellness and kind of move a little bit away from leadership. Do you have a daily routine that you do, or something that doesn't necessarily need to be a routine of steps, but something that you do every day, the evening, the morning, that really helps you get through the day?
I'm in a lot of meetings, so I will tell you, I wish I could incorporate more of what I want. This is going to be the year, but I will tell you that for me, it's the morning. I may not do everything that everybody else does, and I may not have, like, I wouldn't say a set routine, but I'm methodical about my mornings. or even if I'm going out with friends, like I love my me time of getting ready. And it's like my yoga. And I do some of my best thinking in front of the mirror. And I know that sounds cheesy, but I definitely have like my rhythm. And when people mess up that rhythm and I'm single, and did I just podcast that? I did not mean to, but in that, I've often said the man of my dreams is going to know when I'm getting ready, bring me a glass of wine and let me be. Like, but so as long as that's not disturbed. So that's kind of my zen is when
Yeah.
I'm getting ready for anything. I like that me time to do so.
Yeah. Love it. I love it. Now, I appreciate you kind of saying that because, yeah, it doesn't need to be. I know some people are like, okay, I have to do this as soon as I wake up, and then I have to do this, and it doesn't necessarily need to be something that is so, I guess, specific or routine or like a recipe, but
Yeah.
even something as simple as that. I thank you for sharing that.
Well, thank you for normalizing it, because I'll tell you, Michelle, I often feel guilty, like I shouldn't, but I feel like my whole world at work is kind of preset and designed
Yeah.
for me. And I like a plan to some degree, but I think not having too much of one too is liberating.
Yeah, I completely agree. Is there a song that you will play if you're feeling like you don't have, you need more energy or you feel like you need more confidence, you're going into something that's stressful? Do you have like a pump me up song that you listen to?
I probably shouldn't broadcast this either. But well, I like songs that speak to me a lot. And then I like very frivolous songs. So it depends on the moment. So there are some songs, like Josh Stone has a song called Right to Be Wrong, or I think it just depends on what I'm about to face in life. She has another one called Bruised but Not Broken. Like, so there, those two, there was a period of my life, those two were like my theme songs to get through something that was going on in my life. But I would say my go-to pick me up will always be Salt and Pepper Shoop. So I'm really showing my age out there, but let me get in the car and just like rap to something frivolous and inappropriate, and
Love it.
but it makes me
Yes.
smile.
Yeah, salt and pepper. Yeah, and I don't think, I think that 80s, 90s, I don't even know.
Oh,
Is it more 90s or is it late 80s?
I
I
think
don't.
it's late 80s, early 90s. I don't know when Shoop came out, but Express Yourself, like,
Yeah.
push it.
But I even think like young people are like so into that music as well. Like
Let's
it's
hope.
like,
Otherwise, they're
yeah.
rolling their eyes at you and me right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'd love I think actually they're not all together anymore, but I think they've kind of done comeback tours as well. So
All right, well,
I
I'm
could
going to
be
keep
wrong
my eye
about
out
that.
there. That's all right. I'm going to research it when we get off, because if that's true, I'm totally going to look it up.
Do you read, do you have, not do you read, do you have time to read? And are there any like really good books that you've read that you would recommend to the audience? Or if you don't read, like if you listen to podcasts or like audiobooks, anything there that you would recommend?
Well, I'm going to be listening to you more.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
you're welcome, Bosstrack. So I have a little library right over here that you can't see in my office for anyone who wants to borrow stuff. But there's so many. I will tell you, I skim more than I read, potentially, but I highlight. So as I skim, if something really resonates with me, I would say Energy Leadership is something that I skimmed more recently. I love murder mysteries. So if we're being really honest and I just want to take my head away from anything, then
Yeah,
that's kind of where I go. So I do love to read very much, but not always the self-help
right.
stuff that I probably should read more of. Recently, as a team, we started to look at the 5-week leadership challenge. Sorry, I'm looking over here, but I'm looking at the ones that are at the top, which means those are the ones that were the more recent books. There's Courageous Learning, but there's some of those old Jim Collins, Good to Great. Like there's some
Yeah,
of the old books that were really, really amazing. So I have a ton of them. Developing the Leader Within You. I mean, there's so many great ones. I have the Crucial Conversations book right here.
yeah,
So that's so I think it's, I don't My recommendation for anybody is to find the topic you're most passionate about learning more about in yourself and your self-awareness, and see if that also supports, going back to your original question about helping lead others, define if they're being too bold or too aggressive, or, just read up on it and see if you can't find a book that says, here's a way of saying it and being you. It's kind of like sales. When you show up for sales, you may not always know you can be off-putting until somebody tells you, and then you don't lose who you are. You just find your innate way of saying something differently. But that requires a good coach to guide you to do that. And many won't. Many will coach you and say, hey, you just need to do it differently. And then you're left to your own demise. And that's where we have hiccups anyway. Sorry to go back to that, but
No, I mean, and it doesn't have to be self-help. Do you have a favorite author for the murder mystery books that you?
I like J.D. Robb, which is Nora Roberts to some degree, but I like James Patterson.
Okay.
For a while, I was reading a lot of Patricia Cornwell, but sorry, Patricia, but I feel like some of those have gotten redundant and in the storyline.
Yeah, sorry, Patricia.
But no, I like most of those, and did really like her. So yeah.
Do you watch, like, I know White Lotus was kind of like a murder mystery
I
almost,
gotta
because
tell you, no, I watched one episode
yeah,
just recently because somebody swore I would love it, and I'm like, it's like it's slow a little. The first one, it's really I don't even think I finished the whole first episode because I was just like, so maybe it gets better, but there's all this talk about it, and I'm like, I can't even get through the first episode. But I love any police office, like FBI and Special Victims Unit, and some of those kind of TV series. I'll record those through the week, and on a lazy Sunday evening, kind of watch some of those. Yeah.
Very nice.
What
Well,
about you?
that's something new.
Yeah.
I enjoyed White Lotus. You do have to get past the first episode.
Okay, so I need
you
you to
might
tell
even
me
have
about
to
that.
get past the first two, but yeah, it gets really good because I like mysteries where you can't guess what the
Okay.
answer is, and it has you kind of going back and forth the whole time, like because you know right away that somebody died, and so it's like trying to figure that out. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to give it away for anybody, but yeah,
Okay.
I enjoyed
Right,
it.
you've influenced me to watch 2 more episodes and see if I can get there with you.
Yeah, let me know, and I won't bring it up again if you get that far.
Okay.
Well, I've really enjoyed our conversation. I'm so thankful that you came on and we finally got to talk. And I know we have so many different topics we could talk about, and hopefully you'll be back for another session where we could talk about something, kind of expand on some of the things that we talked about today. But for the listeners, for our audience, if they wanted to reach out to you, first of all, is that okay for them to reach out to you? And if it is, how is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. They can reach out. We're all here to help one another, right? So anything that I can do, you can reach out to me via email. And do you want to plug that on in the body of something, Michelle, or did you want me to share that?
Yeah, share it for people that are just listening and might not have the opportunity, but I will also, of course, put it in the show notes and the summary of the episode.
Absolutely. Now, unfortunately, it's a mouthful, but it's Lynae.Remondino@gmail.com. So LYNAE.REMONDINO
Great. So email is the best way, and you're okay with everybody emailing you if
Why
they
not?
have any questions?
Why
Great.
not? Sure.
Perfect. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with the audience before we wrap up?
Besides being your most authentic self and never letting anyone dull your sparkle, I think that's it. I think it's, self-love and care is so important to some of where you were going on the latter part of this, and wellness. And so we should be kind to ourselves as we're being kind to others.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, thank you, Lynae. Thank you so much for coming on. And
thank you for having me.
I really appreciate your time. So enjoy your weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Right.
I hope to see you again soon.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, everyone. This is Michelle again. Just one more thing before you take off. If you've enjoyed this podcast, consider joining our Patreon at patreon.com/Bosstrack, or sign up for our free weekly newsletter. It's easy to sign up and easy to cancel. Every Monday, we send out a short, exclusive newsletter of what we found during the week that we're excited about, we're inspired by, and we're watching and reading. If you'd like to check it out, just to go to thebosstrack.com/newsletter. Just type that into your browser, thebosstrack.com/newsletter. Drop in your email and you'll get the very next one. Thanks for listening.